Wagwan people, glad to have you back. Today, I've got another powerful story lined up, so sit tight and roll with me, because we're going to dive into a journey that will make you see Jamaica in a whole new light.
In the mountains of Jamaica, there's a town that has never been truly conquered. Not by the Spanish, not by the British, not by any colonial power that ever set foot on Caribbean soil. This town was founded by a woman, a warrior, a strategist so brilliant that the British Empire, at the height of its global expansion, was forced to negotiate for peace. Her name was Nanny, and for centuries the records tried to erase her or dismiss her as a myth. She appears on Jamaica's $500 bill. She's the only woman among Jamaica's 7 national heroes. But ask most people outside the Caribbean who Nanny of the Maroons was, and you'll get blank stares. Why is her story kept in the shadows? Because Nanny represents the ultimate colonial nightmare. An African woman who refused to be a slave, who led a guerrilla army against the world's most decorated soldiers, who built a sovereign nation in the middle of an empire, and who won. This is the story they don't want you to know. This is the story of Nanny of the Maroons. Have you ever heard of a woman who broke the British Empire? Let me introduce you to one.
Who was Nanny? Here's what we know for certain. Nanny was real. She lived in the early 1700s. She was the spiritual and military heart of the windward Maroons in the Blue Mountains. To the British, she was a rebellious Obeah woman. To the Maroons, she was Grand Nanny, the mother of their nation. But where did she come from? According to Maroon oral history, Nanny was born in Ghana, West Africa, into the Ashanti people, a nation known for its fierce warriors. While some records suggest she was brought to Jamaica as a captive, many Maroon traditions tell a more powerful story, that Nanny was never a slave. They say she arrived in Jamaica as a free woman, a leader who came specifically to organize resistance and protect her people. Whether she escaped a plantation or arrived as a revolutionary, one thing is clear: Nanny never accepted the yoke of the British Empire. The Blood Brothers. Oral tradition links Nanny to 4 other great Maroon leaders: Kojo, Akompong, Johnny, and Kwao. Whether they were biological siblings or blood brothers bound by a sacred oath of revolution, they divided the island to conquer their oppressors. While Kojo led the Leeward Maroons in the west, Nanny took the east. She led her followers into the Blue Mountains, some of the most rugged, vertical, and unforgiving terrain in the world. These escapees were called Maroons, from the Spanish word cimarron, meaning wild or untamed. But they weren't just hiding, they were building. Nanny Town. By the 1720s, Nanny had established a stronghold, Nanny Town. Think of Nanny Town not as a village, but as a mountain fortress. It was located on a ridge over 2,000 feet high, accessible only by a narrow, treacherous path where people had to walk single file. From this height, the Maroons could see the British coming days before they arrived. They grew their own food, raised livestock, and lived as free Africans while the rest of the island was in chains. The British knew it existed. They knew it was the headquarters of the rebels. But for years, every expedition they sent into those mountains simply disappeared. The British were used to civilized warfare, marching in lines, wearing bright red coats, firing on command. Nanny made sure those tactics were a death sentence in the Jamaican jungle. She utilized environmental warfare. Her warriors perfected the art of camouflage.
They would cover themselves from head to toe in leaves and branches, standing perfectly still. British soldiers would walk right past them, thinking they were looking at a bush, only for the forest to suddenly open fire. She also ran a sophisticated intelligence network. Nanny had spies on nearly every major plantation. She knew when the British were planning a raid, how many men they had, and even how much food they were carrying. The Maroons didn't just fight, they outtaught the empire.
The Abeng. Nanny's most effective communication tool was the Abeng, a side-blown horn made from a cow's horn. To the British, it was just a haunting noise echoing through the peaks, but the Abeng was a coded language. Nanny could signal an ambush, a retreat, or a specific military maneuver across miles of mountain air. It was a wireless communication system the British could never intercept. The legend of the bullets. We have to talk about the supernatural. British soldiers returned from the mountains with terrifying stories. They swore Nanny possessed Obia, African spiritual power. The most famous legend, that Nanny could catch bullets. Some say she caught them in her hands. Others, in a show of ultimate contempt, said she caught them in her clothing and returned them to the soldiers. Historians argue this was psychological warfare. By leaning into these legends, Nanny made the British soldiers believe they were fighting a goddess. A soldier who believes his enemy is immortal is a soldier who has already lost. If this story of resistance is hitting home, hit that like button and subscribe. We are diving into the histories that were meant to be forgotten. Drop a comment. Have you ever heard of a military leader using the forest as a literal suit of armor? Let's get back to the war.
The First Maroon War. For over a decade, Jamaica was a war zone. The British were desperate. The Maroons were infecting the plantations with the idea of freedom. In 1733, the British thought they finally won. A black shot, a slave fighting for the British, named Captain Coffee, claimed he had killed Nanny in battle. The British celebrated. They put it in their official records. But they were wrong. Nanny wasn't dead. She was waiting.
In 1734, the British launched their most brutal attack yet. Led by Captain Stoddart, they managed to haul swivel guns, small cannons, up the cliffs overlooking Nanny Town. They opened fire from above, destroying the huts and forcing the Maroons to flee. The British claimed victory. They captured Nanny Town. But here is the secret. They couldn't hold it. Nanny and her warriors didn't surrender. They just moved deeper into the mist. They moved to Moortown, New Nanny Town. The British held a pile of ashes, while Nanny still held the souls and the blades of her people.
The Treaty of 1739, a tale of two leaders. By 1739, the British treasury was empty. They couldn't win. They begged for a treaty. Cudjoe, the leader of the Leeward Maroons, signed first. He got land and freedom, but the treaty had a dark clause. He had to agree to return future runaway slaves to the British. When the news reached Nanny, she was livid. Oral tradition says she didn't want a piece of paper. She wanted the total end of slavery. She reportedly refused to sign the treaty initially, seeing the slave catching clause as a betrayal of her African kin. Eventually, in 1740, a treaty was signed for the Windward Maroons. While Quau's name is on the physical document, the land was granted to Nanny and her people. She had forced the King of England to grant her 500 acres of sovereign land.
What happened to Nanny? Nanny's death remains a mystery. Some say she lived to a ripe old age in Moortown, passing on her spiritual secrets. Others say she died shortly after the peace. But look at the evidence. In 1740, the British government, the same ones who claimed she was killed in 1733, officially granted land to Nanny and her descendants. You don't grant land to a ghost. She survived their wars, their cannons, and their lies. Why was she untold for so long? Because Nanny breaks the narrative of the passive slave. For 200 years, colonial historians tried to credit her victories to her brothers. They called her a witch instead of a general. It wasn't until 1975, 13 years after Jamaica's independence, that the government finally bestowed upon her the title of National Hero. Moortown today. If you go to the Blue Mountains today, you can visit Moortown. It is a sovereign Maroon community. They have their own leader, called a colonel. They still play the Abeng. They still speak bits of Cromanti, a language derived from their Ashanti ancestors. In 2008, UNESCO declared Maroon heritage a masterpiece of the oram and intangible heritage of humanity. Nanny's untold story is now a world treasure.
What Nanny teaches us? Adaptability. When the British brought cannons, Nanny changed the location. She never fought a losing battle. Unity is power. She built a community that even torture couldn't break. No Maroon ever betrayed Nanny Town's location. The danger of the middle ground. Her hesitation to sign the treaty reminds us to look at the fine print of our freedoms. Cultural pride. She used her African roots, her religion, her language, her herbal knowledge as a weapon of war. Final reflection. We are taught that empires are permanent. We are taught that the little guy can't win. But the British Empire is gone. The plantations are gone. The red coats are gone. And yet, in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica, the Abeng still blows. The Maroons are still there. The land Nanny won in 1740 is still theirs. Who really won the war?
Nanny of the Maroons. She wasn't just a rebel. She was a founder. She wasn't just a witch. She was a genius. They tried to erase her because her existence proves that no matter how much power an empire has, it cannot crush the human will to be free, especially when that will is led by a woman who knows how to catch bullets. This is the history of Jamaica. This is the history of the world. And now you know her name.
If Nanny's story gave you chills, share this video. The algorithm don't always favor the untold stories, so we need your help to spread the word. Check out our other videos on Jamaica's 14 parishes and the hidden heroes of the Caribbean. Until next time, keep digging for the truth. History is only untold if we stop speaking. One love.